Welcome to the Education Corner, a podcast by Education Choices magazine.
Education Corner podcast would like to welcome Mrs. Jane Lunnon, head at Alleyn School, Mrs. Sarah Fletcher, High Mistress of St Paul's Girls' School, Mrs. Tracey O'Brien, head of Wallington High School for Girls, and Mr. James Kidd, the new principal of DLD College in London. Alleyn's is a leading co-educational day school for pupils aged 4 to 18. At Alleyn's, academic excellence shines through a modern and enterprising curriculum powered by the continued pursuit of curiosity and rooted in tradition. Passion is nurtured from a young age with an extensive co-curricular offering as Alleyn's pupils are encouraged to find their thing, whether through sport, arts or elsewhere. Jane Lunnon has worked at some of the country's top schools, including being head at Wimbledon High School and deputy head at Wellington College, before becoming head of Alleyn School in 2021. Jane is the first female head of Alleyn's, demonstrating the school's commitment to co-education and equality across the board. St Paul's Girls' School is a girls' day school for pupils aged 11 to 18. Their founding ethos of providing young women with the skills necessary to take their place with pride in modernising and fast-moving world remains at the core of their work, describing a St Paul's girls' education as rich in possibility and opportunity. Girls at St Paul's achieve highly and go on to succeed across the board. Sarah Fletcher has been High Mistress since 2017 and has previously held headships at several leading London schools, including City of London School and Kingston Grammar School. She is a leading educationalist committed to high academic achievement, diversity and inclusion. Wallington High School for Girls is an all-girls selective grammar school located in Sutton. They frequently achieve top academic results nationally, as well as providing excellent support and guidance across the school. They describe their curriculum and school life as ambitious, broad, empowering, coherent and inclusive, supporting all pupils to achieve both academically and personally. Tracey O'Brien joined as head teacher in 2023. She has a wealth of experience in the education sector, both teaching and working with schools as a school improvement advisor. Tracey's interest in educational research supports her work at Wallington brilliantly, encouraging innovation and evidence-informed practices to best benefit her pupils and the school community. DLD College London is a co-educational day and boarding school located centrally on London's South Bank. The school offers state-of-the-art modern facilities for learning and living on site and embraces their central location, boasting London is our classroom. Pupils at DLD achieve highly, leaving school with excellent exam results as well as a wealth of experiences and knowledge formed outside of the classroom. James Kidd became principal of DLD College in August after 4 years at Bints and senior vice principal, and previously worked at St John's School Leatherhead for a number of years. James is dedicated to the DLD ethos of development, leadership and diversity, and plans to continue to embrace and promote these values across school life. We are honoured to have you all with us on our London School Panel podcast, and I'm sure parents are going to be very keen to listen to all that you have to share about the London senior school system. Firstly, would you each like to introduce yourselves and your schools beyond what I've already said? So perhaps if we begin, Sarah, with St Paul's Girls.
St Paul's is a wonderful, vibrant and creative school in Hammersmith, where we welcome students from right the way across London because the transport links to us are very easy. It's a real pleasure and privilege to work here because staff and students are absolutely dedicated to providing the best education possible, but also open to all of the opportunities of a fast-moving, modernising world, which means that we've been able to adapt what we do to meet the needs of the future, which has been tremendously empowering and exciting.
And Jane, would you like to tell us a little bit more about Alleyn's?
Yes, good morning. Thank you so much for having me on this. Alleyn's is a wonderful co-education academic school. We are based in beautiful leafy Dulwich. We were founded 400 years ago by Edward Alleyn, who is a Jacobean player, and some of that spirit of philanthropy, but also fun and creativity and aspiration has kind of lasted over the centuries. And our school is absolutely full of that, and full of the most wonderful, talented young people who wear their talents lightly and are all set to go and make a difference to the world when they leave us.
And Tracey, would you like to tell us a little bit about the offering at Wallington High School?
I've been here a year, and Wallington High School for Girls is a wonderful place to come into. We've got about 1,500 young women. They are a real credit to themselves in the school. They're passionate about learning. We're all passionate about empowering them to be future leaders, citizens of the future. They're really creative. They have real agency. We're also in a leafy area in Sutton, in southwest London. Transport links are quite good, so we have a range of students who come from quite a broad area. But it's a wonderful, happy, caring, compassionate place to be.
And finally, James, tell us a little bit about DLD and particularly the boarding offerings that you provide.
DLD College is 13 to 19. We are literally in the heart of London, so it's about a 30-second walk to the House of Parliament. So we're here in the heart of London, 420 students, 250 boarders. Our makeup is 65% international, so a real diversity, 54 different nationalities on roll. And that boarding community is that home from home. So we have day and boarding students, but they're really seamless during the school day. You can definitely see that they are mixing together and so on. But our boarders gain that extra additional place, if you like, upstairs. So it's literally one building. So we don't have the big leafy spaces that Wallington have, but we do have obviously 17 floors of buildings. So our boarding is upstairs. I live here myself on the 14th floor, and my commute is just a lift each morning.
Sounds rather tremendous. Now, obviously, the reason for the podcast, we're doing a London Schools Focus. A lot of parents come from all over the world to experience the education system in London. And there are many parents living in London trying to decide which school is best fit for their child. What do you feel are the benefits of choosing a London school? Perhaps, James, if you begin, as you kind of wear it on your T-shirt, don't you? London is your classroom.
Exactly, yeah. I would say London's our classroom and also our playground, particularly for the boarders. So for us, it's about experiential learning. So even at year 9, for example, we have something called Urban Schools Project. So on a Friday morning, they're off timetable and actually going out and visiting places which link to what they've been studying during their course. Something you just can't do when you are hundreds of miles away from where the action is. Remembrance Day, our year 9s can go around the corner to Imperial War Museum. It's a short walk and go and experience and see what's happening. Also access to lots of really good universities here in London who have good relationships with us to be able to say, let's go and see what that looks like. So I'm aspiring to be a doctor. Let's go and see what that looks like. Museums or art galleries for art students, everything's on our doorstep. London's also a really vibrant place. So I think just to get that passion, enthusiasm that was mentioned earlier on into the classroom, being able to go and experience it firsthand is something you can't buy when you're living somewhere else. It's just too much of a hassle for staff. But based in London, all of our schools, we can really benefit from that.
And Sarah, what do you feel St Paul's Girls? I know that children experience many things in their education, and being in London is a big part of that.
As James has said, London is tremendously exciting and has extraordinary museums and theatres and concert halls and venues of all sorts, work experience, opportunities to go and visit different places. But also it is a melting pot of different nationalities and communities. And it's so enriching for our students to be part of that, because that's reflected in all of our schools. And it means that all of that rich cultural diversity is within our walls. And we're working closely in partnership with so many schools, primary and secondary, around us, precisely because we're in the city. It means that we can do that, and we can reach out, draw upon expertise elsewhere, share ideas, and bring our students into contact with people they otherwise wouldn't meet. I think London is rich in opportunity. It also means we can bring in the most extraordinary speakers internationally as well, because of course we have some extraordinary airports around us as well. So our ability to further the education of our students is enormously expanded by our geographical location.
Jane,
Thank you. And I'd agree with all of those points. Absolutely. Yes. There is something about the culture and the feel and the soul of this city that inhabits, the schools that operate in it. And we all benefit very much from that. I would just make another point. Sarah mentioned there the point about partnership, which is a huge part of our provision. And yes, obviously the very fact that you're in a city where you have many, many more schools and industries and businesses on your doorstep means that you can bring people in and you can, as we do, work with industry and work with experts in their field, but also you can get your children out. And I think the capacity to look up and out is part of what a really great education gives you. I also think London is a city full of ambition. And again, that's part of what we certainly want to encourage in our children. And there's one final point, which is, I do think nonetheless is a very relevant point. Although we have great transport links and we also have our own coaches that bring children in from all across the city. But the truth is, if you are in London, you can commute yourself to school. And that feels like such an important rite of passage and a transition thing that is possible in a city that has many transport links that is not always the case elsewhere.
Thank you. And Tracey, do you have anything further you'd like to add?
I mean, I agree with everything everybody said. London is the most amazing place. It's inspiring, it's adventurous, there's a whole mixture of different cultures, of arts, of sports. I think the other benefit for London is you've got all of that, but actually it's really easy to get out of London. So we do 5 enrichment days in the year for all of the school. And so some of that is spent in town. But actually, sometimes we get on a coach and we might go to the coast, or we get on a coach, we might go to RHS Wisley or something. And I think picking up on something about the partnerships, we encourage a lot of our students to do volunteering, especially in the sixth form. And there are so many other organisations and primary schools around that mean that we can facilitate that. And we also encourage all of our year 11 and 13 to do work experience. And again, I think picking up on what people have said, that there is just that richness of opportunity that London offers. So yeah, it's a fabulous place.
Obviously, there's many families currently preparing for the 11 plus application process, and the London day school system is very highly competitive. What advice would you give parents to support them and their children through the process? Perhaps Sarah, if you'd lead this.
I think parents need to help their children prepare for what they know they're going to be facing. And by preparation, I don't mean intensive tutoring. What I do mean is helping them to understand what a verbal and a non-verbal reasoning test might look like, helping them, if there's going to be an interview involved, to begin to articulate their thoughts. But I'm a massive fan of play and of children being children, and those precious early years being a place of adventure, curiosity, where people are really developing themselves in the absence of enormous academic pressure. And tutoring, I think, has become overmighty, and there are far too many young people in both of our sectors, independent and state sector, who are receiving far too many hours of tutoring. And that can have many bad results. One, it can over-prepare and they potentially get into schools that they're not really suited to. Two, it means that potentially a whole year of their life is spent in preparation for the next stage, when in fact, it should be a joyous period where they're really developing themselves. So my advice to parents is allow your children to play. In so doing, introduce them to all sorts of different experiences and ideas so that they can begin to develop their own interests. And that joy in learning, that curiosity and creativity then can shine through in the interviews and in the entrance papers. Prepare them, but please don't over-tutor them.
And Jane, perhaps you'd like to add to that.
Yes, I completely concur with the point about not relying too heavily on intensive tutoring, which I think not only does it kill the joy of childhood, but I also think it can often really get in the way of the capacity for independent creative thought, which is exactly what you want to see when children appear in the process. I think the two things I would say to parents is, one, don't panic. The right school is there and you will almost certainly find it. Your child will find it in the process. I think if you think about it, what the stats are, I don't know, 90% of children, 99 probably percent of children end up in a school that they're really happy in and that works for them. So there are many, many brilliant schools. And I think trying to remember that and not get too fixated on, just one or two feels really important. Second thing I would say to parents is, and I know this may not necessarily fall on fertile ground, but I'm going to say it anyway. Aim for three schools. Have your top choice, really aspirational, hope this will work. Have your middle, this is great. And have your I really like the school, but it all went wrong on the day and I'm still going to be happy here. And have no more than that, because to Sarah's point, putting children through many, many entrance tests and application processes just does not feel right. And if you work with the head of your current school, your child's primary school, you should find the right school for your child. So don't panic and trust the process would be what I would say.
Now, with the selection process, obviously there are many different formulas for the different schools. Perhaps, Tracey, would you like to talk us through the selection process at Wallington High School for Girls?
Yes, of course. So when students are in year 5, they apply to do the selection eligibility test with us. We have 2 rounds of tests. They're both in September. So for the first round, the students come in, there's a maths and an English paper, and then we mark those pretty quickly. And within about 10 days, we invite students who've passed those back for the second test. And then on the second test, we have our subscription application process, and then we start inviting children. So we take 210 students in year 7, who probably, I think this year we had about 1,500 students sit the first test, and we're still working out the ones to invite back for next weekend.
Next weekend will be?
That's the second stage test.
The second stage. And at St Paul's Girls, Sarah, would you like to talk us a little bit about your entrance procedure?
Yeah, we offer a computerised test, which will happen at the end of this term, and that's in verbal and non-verbal and maths. And out of those, we then select the candidates who we think will have a really good shot at the entrance exam. So those are sat in January, and we have English and maths, and we have a general paper as well. And then what we do is we take all of those scores and we put them together in a big discussion, and then all of those that we think will then have a good shot at the next stage, we invite back to the interview. So we interview a lot of students, and we want that interview to be really exploring what it is that they're interested in and who they are as people, to give them every opportunity to show us what they can do and to shine. And as a result of that, we then make our offers.
Thank you. And James, what entrance process is taking place at DLD?
So for year 9, there's an adaptive computer test. So again, and we always tell people you can't prepare for it. So please don't try to second guess the test. It obviously will just work out as they're going along and adapt as it goes. And it's a little bit gamified, so it doesn't just feel like a maths test, etc. Everyone will have an interview. And again, and speaking back to some of the points made earlier, we don't want people to have been over prepared. So when people come in and they say, would you like to tell me about my favorite book? No, I wouldn't. I'd like you to answer these ones here. And in that conversation, you might talk about your books that you've been reading, but you can always tell those who have been drilled too much. And so we want to avoid that. So they'll always interview a senior member of staff, and obviously they're going through the tour process. And that tour process is also part of that sort of selection, if you like. So when they're going around, hearing what questions they're asking, but also, does it fit both ways? So trying to understand, is this going to be the right school for you? And all of us are probably quite different. So just trying to get that right sense of it. So it's quite personalized, but they will all do that adaptive test to get a sense of it. But we're not using that as a beating stick, if you will, like it's just to get a sense of where they are. The interview has more play to that. So if we are hearing great things and think there's going to be a great fit, that's more important to us than the actual test. And obviously for sixth form, it's looking at their GCSE results and what might be appropriate for next stages.
And Jane, do you want to tell us a little bit about the application process at Alleyn's from 11 plus?
Yes, we do all of our assessment in January, and our candidates will sit papers in English and in maths and in verbal and non-verbal reasoning, as has been referenced already. And then shortlisted candidates will be then invited back for a one-to-one interview and for kind of group activity, where we also assess how they're working together and how they collaborate. I mean, we have about 11 applicants for every place, so it is competitive and selective. But what I would say is, honestly, I don't think there's anything we give more time to in the entire school than trying to make sure we get the right candidates for the school. And that is absolutely, we do not just go down and draw a line, where we get to 160 in terms of ranking. So we really, really do try to look at all of the information that's coming in about the child and try to work out, okay, what are they bringing and will they be happy and will they flourish here?
And I suppose another thing is you want a mixture, don't you, of talents and skills, and you don't want a whole cohort of alpha children who aren't going to work together and kind of be able to be a team. Beyond that, when talking to parents, obviously one of the questions is single sex, co-ed, boarding. This one really is very much directed at Sarah at St Paul's Girls and Wallington Grammar. And actually, Jane, having worked at Wimbledon High, you've got some experience of it. What would you argue are the advantages of single sex education? And how do you feel the girls benefit from being together? And how do you feel that you're able to support their learning styles and interests perhaps differently from a boys' school, St Paul's Boys, or, Dulwich College? Obviously, you're very much working with the girls. How do you feel that you best serve them? And perhaps Sarah?
I think at St Paul's Girls' School, we've got the best of both worlds because we have a single-sex environment, which is extraordinarily empowering, but we are also now in strong partnership with St Paul's Boys' School. So we do numbers of joint activities. Every year group has a joint activity, but we have wonderful things like MasterChef and Battle of the Bands. We have joint entrepreneurship. There's joint prefect training, and we do all sorts of things together. And that will be growing with the following year. So the partnership with the Boys' School brings the co-educational dimension, but it also means that our girls can grow up within a single-sex environment. Their side of the river, and it means that we can really cater to their needs. So all of the leadership positions per force within the student body are taken by girls, which is tremendously empowering. We have 45 girls in our lower sixth studying physics. So all of the gender stereotypes are upped. None of them count. We have girls interested in theatre and art. I have in my lower six at the moment, I'm going to say well over 80% of the students taking maths A level. So all of your thoughts about what a girls' school might look like are certainly not the case over here. And I think what it does is it enables the girls to grow in confidence, to feel that they can take on anything that will be in school and that they are the equals of anyone. It enables them to explore their identity free from any sense of stereotyping what they feel they ought to be. It means that we can respond to their needs in PFHE and talk to them about all sorts of issues facing women. We can surface issues about women in the world in ways which I think are perhaps more difficult within a co-educational environment. And I think the girls genuinely feel very free to express themselves, which you can see in our non-uniform rule as well. We have very few rules at St Paul's. And it really does help to create genuine individuals. People ask me what a St Paul's girl looks like. And I will say that there are as many St Paul's girls as there are students. But what they do share in common is a sense of confidence and a sense of empowerment. And that's very important.
They also have a marvellous mentoring system, don't they?
They do. So our students, I think of all the schools I've ever been associated with, St Paul's is the one which empowers the students most. Our head of school team is very far from normal prefecting. They don't do duties around the school in that way, but they help me to run the school. And they come up with all sorts of ideas about what they want to happen. All of the clubs and societies are run by the students, and the students mentor each other. That was incredibly important during the Everyone's Invited period, not only because our students, older ones, were talking to the younger students about issues of consent and respect, but our PFHE delivered around those themes to our Year 10 students and delivered jointly with the St Paul's Boys' School. And it meant that we had lots of really important conversations across the different schools with the students talking to each other, mentoring each other, and those conversations continue. So yes, the students are involved in pastoral mentoring, academic mentoring, and also helping us to run the school and to understand their needs.
And Jane, obviously Alleyn's, like DLD also, is co-ed. What are you enjoying? You've obviously had experience of both, so you've got quite a lot of insights. How do you feel the children are able to celebrate being together in the co-ed environment?
Yes, great question. And it's true. I mean, I also went to an all-girls school and then had a lovely time running Wimbledon High, which is a brilliant all-girls school. So I honestly can speak with really, I think, strong experience of both kinds of education. And I think the first thing I would say actually is a big disclaimer, but I do think truly, there are really stunning examples of every kind of school, co-ed or single sex. And I really powerfully believe that. So I think you should choose the school first, and then if it happens to be single sex or co-ed, then that's great. Personally, I feel that really, really strongly. Second thing I would say, I think when co-ed is done really well, it is pretty hard to beat, because all of those wonderful things that Tracey and Sarah were saying, which I entirely recognise are features of the way the girls are in their schools, that is exactly how the girls are in my school too, and also the boys. And they truly, truly do work together. I was reflecting on gender stereotypes and thinking, do we see that in? But truly, so maths is our most popular subject, and 2/3 of the pupils doing maths are girls at A level, for example. I mean, it's physics, they're incredibly well represented. So I think although there is a risk, of course, of gender stereotyping, as long as you are really focused on that and really clear about the risks of that, and then do what you need to do to offset them, I think you then have an amazing, amazing environment where boys and girls basically grow up together, and they learn about themselves and they learn about the world together, and all those lovely benefits of having, managing PSHE discussions and navigating their way through, let's face it, a fairly complex world, doing that together, and just having friends who are boys and or girls for life, which are kind of natural and easy and not sort of freighted with anything. That is an incredible benefit. Yeah, when it's done well, it's super exciting.
And James, anything to add to that?
I think that's spot on, Jane. There are challenges and benefits with all kinds of schools. We're trying to prepare them for society beyond our sort of small number of years that we have them relative to their life. So giving them as many opportunities to experience what life will look like will be our sort of main driving force. They do have opportunities even here. So, for example, in boarding, that's obviously going to be girls and boys separated. So there are opportunities within a co-ed school where you can have some of those single-sex benefits, but they come together. So we have obviously co-ed classes, co-ed tutor groups, co-ed houses. I know some schools, my previous school, for example, had single-sex houses within a co-ed school. There are pros and cons to everything that we do, but I absolutely think it is about finding the right school for your child. And if what they need right now is something a bit different to what they might need in the future, then so be it. Find what they need. Sometimes we find students joining us in the sixth form who've come from a single-sex school. It's worked really well for them, and it's been really exactly what they needed up until GCSE. But in the sixth form, they perhaps want something else a little bit different, and that's a great opportunity we can provide them here at DLD.
In actual fact, the next question is also for you. So the boarding, because you're our boarding rep for today. I was there with Irvin not so long ago. There's quite an international element to DLD, obviously. How do you feel the students benefit from boarding in London, say, compared to somewhere in the countryside in Sussex or wherever?
So I was at St John's Leatherhead in Surrey for 14 years, so I can speak to that side of things. Well, first of all, boarding links back to that previous kind of question in so much as that preparation for life. So preparing them for a bit of independence. It's a halfway house. Obviously, they've got that wraparound care, but it's an opportunity to be a little bit away from parents before what can be a very big step going off to university. It also gives parents a bit of flexibility. So whilst obviously we have for boarding, parents can come and take their children away for the weekend or meet them in London for, I don't know, birthday dinners, whatever. A number of our parents will work in London. And so it's actually very handy for them as they're coming up and down. But in terms of just what do they get in that moving forward side of things, I think they get a different experience you can't get if you're living at home with parents, whether you've got an only child versus someone with 4 brothers and sisters. It's something you can't really get without being in that experience. And so just living it before you need to properly live it, I think is something that boarding gives. Boarding in London is obviously very different. And I'll be the first to say, when I first came up from Surrey to London and thinking, gosh, they've gone from what was essentially a 2-minute walk to a very small town, and that was their limit, versus London on our doorstep. It is very different. But I think, again, it's about putting in place those parameters. It's about educating them. It's about talking through, if you do this, it leads to this. But we also have a load of measures. So our house parents know where they are. They know where to get to them, how to kind of talk them through various bits and pieces. The start of the year, we take them on a big London bus to sort of show them around where they need to be. And we have the police come in, and it feels sometimes like I'm hot dialing straight to those bits, but using those authorities, I'm sure everyone else does, to be able to educate rather than have to worry about don't do this because we're in London. What about the negatives? Instead, we switch it around. What are the positives of boarding in London? Let's utilise all those opportunities. And as I said earlier, it's not just London as our classroom, it's also our playground. And so giving them that opportunity, because in a couple of years' time, they're going off to university. And so if we haven't prepared them for those things, it's going to be very difficult for them. So yeah, I think in the city it is different, but it's not massively different. We're still talking about kids, and we're still talking about teenagers who just need to adapt and to learn and make their mistakes.
In this edition, we're thinking about how schools are preparing children for life after school, which I think for everyone is becoming a very key focus. You know, it's not just about getting A levels and GCSEs, it's being able to cope. And we know that they're going to go into a very challenging world. They're possibly going to go into careers that we can't even name right now. It's all very fast changing. How do you feel that you are preparing the children, not just getting the academic results that they're going to need to go to the universities, but also for life beyond the school? Perhaps, Sarah, would you like to start?
With pleasure. I think preparation for life beyond school begins day one that you walk through the door. And we always say that our exam results are really a byproduct of the way we teach rather than the direct result of it. So although our examination results are superb, we really want our students to develop their independence in thinking, creativity, curiosity. So our classes are full of debate and discussion, sharing of views, understanding that people will have different viewpoints and learning how to accommodate those, to argue around them. It's about introducing them, Tracey has said, to a wonderful array of co-curricular activities, which develops their interests and talents in so many different ways, including, of course, teamwork and leadership, but so much else besides. It's also to do with the speakers we've already spoken about, the importance of London and how incredible that is as an environment for preparing people for the world beyond school. So speakers, but visiting speakers as well, can help us with work experience, but also with bringing them different ideas about the world around them. Theatre visits, whatever it is that brings them into contact with life in its broadest sense is so important. And the digital world, that's something which is not separate from education. It's not separate from life, but integral. It permeates everything that we do. And it's too easy, I think, to neglect that. But what we've done at St Paul's is to build a foundation course at Key Stage 3, which introduces young people not only to coding, but creative technologies, through robotics, to AI, to VR. We've written our own GCSE equivalent courses in creative technologies and computer science, and really large numbers of students take those. We've got all sorts of clubs and electives. So I think Tracey mentioned green car racing as well. We've got that. We've got robotics. We've got AI clubs. We've got all sorts of things, anything really that the students want. And of course, because we're in London, we can draw on expertise, which is so important because you can't expect teachers to be able to do all of this. And now, of course, that artificial intelligence has come along, particularly obviously ChatGPT equivalents, what we're doing is training all of our teachers in how to use these things effectively. And after half term this term, we hope to be going out and begin introducing them into classrooms in the middle school and the senior school, where students and staff are going to be exploring the ethics, the uses, the difficulties, because when they go to university, let alone the world of work, all of these things will be there and they will be expected to use them with facility, but also with judgment. And so in every way, we are trying to bring up young people so that they're not afraid of the world around them and they can negotiate it with confidence. And we have literally this term just opened our Rosalind Franklin room, which is our Centre for Design and Innovation, which is so exciting because it models interdisciplinarity. It has art and sculpture and textiles and a wonderful design workshop. It has makerspaces and computer labs and immersive theatre. It's got gathering steps where students can give talks, where they can bring in speakers, pastoral spaces where they can relax. But the whole thing, as far as possible, with movable, flexible spaces, glass walls, so they can see what they're doing. And it invites them to share ideas across the curriculum. So we're breaking down walls, we're asking students to really have fun and to play with new ideas. in exactly the same sort of way that you might imagine, that they will be bringing together teams of experts from different disciplines and putting it all together at university and in the world of work beyond. And we're introducing them to the pleasure, the joy, and the real problem-solving skills that they can bring to bear to enable them to use their knowledge and skills to the best of their ability.
And it is going to be a path to navigate. Jane, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, you'd be unsurprised to learn that very similar things happening here. We absolutely take the view that the entire purpose of our education is to prepare our children to be all they can be, literally to find what they were put on earth to do, and then to do it, with their whole hearts. And that's what a great education does. So everything about our co-curricular provision, our pastoral care, incredibly exciting learning that happens in the classrooms and beyond, all of that, the over 200 clubs and societies, all of that stuff is really about preparing our children for life beyond. It's our co-curricular, it's not extracurricular. We truly believe this is all part of preparing young people to go and thrive and prosper. A big part, we talked about partnerships before, but I would just say, so every single child in our school is engaged one way or another in our partnership programme throughout the school. And indeed, we have a new innovation is that we have just built that into our timetable. So we are writing schemes of work that very specifically look at developmental partnership activities, so that when children come in year 7, they might, do a little bit of work on advocacy and start thinking about what they care about. By the time they're in year 13, they are setting up their own charities and running their own major projects in this space. So all of that is about, again, sense of agency. Who am I? What can I do? What are my skills? And how am I going to, with the incredible benefit of an amazing education, go out and make the world better? That is our aim. And the only other part I would say is, I must come and look at your beautiful building, Sarah. We are literally just about to, we are building now our all studios, which will be opening at the end of this term. And again, similar idea. It's a home for our AIQ, which is the curriculum that we've developed along with MIT, actually. We're very excited about that, looking at the intersection between AI and IQ. And so it's not just what are the skills that we need to live in an AI world, but how do we learn differently, because AI is a feature of the way we are all living now. So really, really interesting course there. And our all studio space is a place for play and experimentation and, just giving kids the sense of having a go. And the final thing is, and I think this is equally relevant living in our world now and going out and learning to flourish in it, is our whole wellbeing programme. So a year ago, we opened the Well, the Alleyn's Well. That is the kind of base for our proactive pastoral care. Of course, we do loads and loads of reactive stuff. If the wheels fall off, we have people to help pick our children back up again. But we really try to get ahead of it. And we talk a lot about mental fitness. We are really focused on the work of Marty Seligman, positive psychology, all of the things that we know help to develop children's, again, resilience in a world that is both exciting and full of challenge. So, yeah, lots going on in that space.
Tracey, do you have anything to add to that?
We do lots of similar things. I think some of the other bits, and I'm sure it happens at all the schools, is sort of the alumni network. So we have a huge alumni network who come in and they talk to the students about, their experiences and their journey. And I think that's really, really useful. We also have a lecture programme where you've got different people from different industries, because I think some of the stereotypes about the girls' education system, which we picked up on, is we challenge that. And actually, we have a really broad offer and the students do a huge range. And actually having lots of different women who come in and talk about all the different roles, these jobs that I've never heard of, that they come in and talk to the students. And then in terms of wellbeing, we also have a wellbeing dog called Teddy, who students can book in and take for a walk around the grounds. So yeah, lots of things to really support. It is that idea about agency, about, social action, growing up to be a really rounded, happy citizen. I think that's a real focus for us, is actually trying to make sure the students have a sense of self and then they're happy and they have choice. I just echo what the other speakers have said, and it's just about building in those opportunities. We're not an exam factory. We don't operate that model. We operate trying to really focus on the holistic child who is confident, who is courageous and is curious to go out and try different things.
Obviously, I think all of you have mentioned that London is increasingly diverse and international. It's one of the things I think the schools particularly are able to embrace. I spoke to Truro School in Cornwall, and we were talking about their diversity there was more economic than perhaps what many London schools are dealing with the many different international families and families from all over the world. How do you feel that a London education and choosing a school in London is going to benefit the children from a global perspective? Because I think increasingly we are all encompassing a global perspective into their education. Perhaps, Jane, you'd like to answer this.
I'm so glad you asked this question, because I do think if you're thinking about the great benefits and strengths of London, I think we do not shout loudly enough about how incredible this city is. And I know we started with, all the opportunities, and that is true. But there's also something just simply amazing about how diverse and inclusive and actually in general accepting and warm and tolerant and open our city is. I genuinely think we don't make enough of that as a country. We're so good at doing ourselves down most of the time. But it's a massive feature. And not only that, but that we have been like that for, well, maybe not millennia, but centuries. We have been this wonderful, diverse, exciting, open city, interested by different cultures and welcoming them and learning from them. And I don't know, could there be a better environment to be educating children? That's what I think about that.
And Sarah, would you like to add to that on a very positive note?
I agree completely with what Jane has said. I think we talk ourselves down far too much. London, you only have to walk around a corner and you can find different cultures and different cuisines and different ways of approaching things, which I think is just extraordinary. There are very, very few cities that can rival us. And within the arts as well, there is an awful lot of represented from different cultures across the world. Different languages are being spoken. When I walk out on Brook Green, I can hear numerous languages being spoken, which I think is wonderful. And in my school, there are certainly over 50 languages, probably more than that being spoken at home by the students themselves. So the international, global attraction of London, I think, is really one of those intangible benefits of education in such an extraordinary capital city.
It really is. James, do you want to finish this for us?
I think the final point to that is probably to take those bits, and this is the other way around. International students say they love London. They've looked at other schools in other cities, in other countries. And whilst we may not necessarily recognise how great it is, sometimes listening to the voices outside coming in, and they're choosing to come here. They want to come to London. They see all the benefits that sometimes we don't realise. It becomes a norm for us. So they see that and they want to come. We're always finding lots and lots of people and having to say, look, we haven't got space for all of you, but we want to have those varieties coming in because they offer so much, and it becomes that constant cycle. So I agree with everything that was said earlier, but just to reiterate, that's what the students are saying as well. So I think let's listen to them and take their words as true, because London has so much to offer, and let's make the most of it.
Sarah?
I think London also throws up challenges, doesn't it? It isn't a perfect place, and there are communities which suffer discrimination and which find life a lot harder. And I think that's another thing which our schools, within the wonderful pastoral care that Jane and others have spoken about, which is so important, it enables us to enter into safe spaces where students and staff can talk about their feelings and talk about sorts of things that they've experienced. And we can really begin to embrace them and to understand them rather more. I think all of us need to be very humble in our acceptance that our view, anyone's view of society in the world is going to be partial, it's going to be circumscribed by our own experiences. But what a London school enables us to do is to open those conversations, to embrace all of the diversity, all its richness and all its complexity, and enable students to begin to understand themselves and other communities rather better. And I think that's another extraordinary privilege, which can be difficult at times, but which is so important.
Thank you so much. We're very privileged to have had you all on our podcast, and I'm sure that many people are going to be very interested to hear what you've had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.